When I put this presentation together in September of 2020, there had been a lot of people online asking questions about organization and not a lot of answers. Now, since then, Helen has put up a video on how she organizes her patterns. So this is just my take on it. Most likely the reason you're not seeing a lot of answers on how people organize or how to organize your patterns is because each person's going to do it a different way. It's going to be more meaningful for you to do it one way than it may be for somebody to do it another way. But whatever organization system you choose, it's going to need to be maintained. So as you buy new patterns, you need to keep up with it, and it's going to take some time up front. You probably already realize that IQ does not allow subfolders. So some thought up front is important to avoid having to rework your system later. You also cannot rename a catalog, but a workaround to that is just to move everything out of one catalog into a new catalog, and then you can come back and delete the old one. I would suggest that before you start trying to organize on the IQ, you think about it for a little bit and decide how you want to organize. Some good examples might be to go to your favorite pattern sites and see how patterns are organized on those websites. But whatever method you choose, it's helpful to know how IQ treats the naming of a catalog. So to create new catalogs, you have to go into Utilities, Library Maintenance, and we're going to do this in the pattern library. You can organize your block library and your quilt library as well. Going to do pattern library, and we have options of cleanup or move. Cleanup is deleting. So if you had done what I just mentioned, moved everything out of one folder into a folder with a new name and wanted to delete that old folder, you would go into cleanup. But we're just going to move stuff around and create new folders right now. So we're going to go to move. And it'll be a lot faster on your tablet than it is on the stick. So I'm going to click on that, and the first thing is any catalog that has spaces in front of the name is going to be moved higher than anything else on your catalog list except for the computer art patterns, which don't show here because you can't create on that. It's in the system. So you'll notice that my name is clear at the very top. I have several spaces in front of my name, and I moved it to the top, and I did this because my name is so far down in the alphabet, I don't like having to scroll down there to find stuff that I'm working on. But spaces, the more spaces, the higher it's going to be on the list. So just to play, let's create some folders. Now to create a folder, you have to actually move something into it. You can't just create empty folders. You can have empty folders once they've been created, but you can't create them to start with, okay? So it doesn't matter what pattern we choose. I'm just going to choose this one and say move. Now, when I'm organizing on my IQ, I like to keep everything with designers, but I also have other categories, and I've deleted them off the stick so you're seeing this clean. So I like to leave it with the designer, so I'm going to say yes, I want to leave a copy here, and if I'm just moving one design, it's going to bring up and ask me if I want to rename it or what I want to name it. I'm just going to leave it as is and say enter. So then if you go all the way to the top here, we're going to have new catalog. We're going to click on that. And you may have seen that test up there at the top. I'm going to put, let's put 7 spaces in front of it this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the word test, and enter. And it moved that all the way to the top because 7 spaces is more than any of the other names that I have here that have spaces in front of them. So if I wanted to create another folder, let's try it with just 1 space in there. I'm going to move. Yes, I'm going to leave the copy here, leaving the name. I want a new catalog. Select. And this time I'm just going to put 1 space and test and enter. And you'll notice because I had more spaces on Sonia, it's above the single space with test. So the number of spaces matter first. The next thing in order of precedence is catalogs that start with dashes, and it works exactly the same way as it does with spaces. The more dashes, the higher it's going to be, but it will be below any catalogs that have spaces at the beginning. So let's move this pattern again. Move. Yes, I'm going to leave a copy. Enter. And we're going to go back up to the new catalog, and let's put 3 dashes in. Whoops, I got to select it first, sorry. 1, 2, 3, and test. And enter. Okay, so it came below everything that had spaces in front of it, and then it came before anything else down below. Let's move it again and just put in 1 dash. Yes. And we want to select the new catalog again. And this time I'm just going to put a single dash in and test and enter. Okay. So you can see more dashes the higher it is on the list. The next thing in order, so we have spaces and then we have dashes. The next thing is numbers. It's a little bit different than just counting 1 through 1,000 or whatever number you want to go to. Any catalog that the number starts with a 0, so it could be 0, 1, 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is going to come before any catalog that starts with the number 1 or any digit after that. So just as an example, move. Yes, I would. Enter. We're going to go up to this one. New catalog, select. I'm going to say 0, 1,598, and test. Oops. Enter. And you'll see it comes after the dashes. Now, if I had the number, a catalog that started with the number 15, you would think that it would come before this, but it doesn't. It comes after it. We're going to say move. Yes. Yes. New catalog. Enter. 15. 15. Test. Enter. Oops. So here you can see if we were actually talking about a number in real life, 1,598 would be higher, but because it starts with a 0, it comes before the 15. So anything that started with a 2 would come after this. I could have a huge number here, or I could have just 1. I hope that's making sense. Let's just move 1 more. Yes, enter, and the new catalog, and let's make it 9, 3, 5, 6, and test. Well, I didn't put the test in there, but that's okay. Here it is. So the first digit and then every digit after that. So if we had 01595, it would come before this. If we had, so I hope that makes sense. It's going to go through your first digit first. Anything that starts with a 9 is going to be all grouped down with a 9. So let's just do one of those. Move, yes, yes. New catalog, and let's just enter 9. We could put test behind it or whatever you want, but and what I wanted you to see, it's a single digit, so it came first. There aren't any more after it. It's just like if you were alphabetizing something, you're going to look at the short word, like the would come before theme. Okay, now that I probably completely confused that. The next thing that comes after the numbers is the alphabet. And it is alphabetical. You can, that doesn't make any difference. We're going to move this, yes, and enter. And we want the new catalog. Select. And let's just say that was a Panto. I know it's not. Let's create a catalog that is Pantos. But it's going to move it down. Enter. I think there may have already been a Panto. Here it is, Pantos. But I can use that as a heading. I can then go move. And yes, I would. Enter new catalog and select. And then let's just say Pantos again. And let's say feathers. Enter. So let's scroll down to that. And we have Pantos, and then we have Pantos feathers. So it's going to go, if I do this Pantos with a dash and then a word after it, it's going to go alphabetical. It's going to have Pantos first, and then it's going to have all my subcategories here with the dash in there. Pantos dash feathers. If I did Pantos dash floral, floral would come after feathers because it's going to be alphabetical. If I did Pantos slash animals, it would come before the feathers. So a couple things I just want to tell you about, I hope this wasn't too confusing, is I tried creating a catalog that started with a period because that is there in my pad on my tablet. IQ acted like it was creating the folder, but it doesn't appear anywhere on the catalog list. When I tried to create that same catalog a second time with the same name, IQ says the catalog already exists, but it still doesn't appear on the list. So when you're naming, spaces come first. If you're wanting to move stuff up to the top, maybe spaces aren't the best way because then you have to guess how many spaces you used or remember trial and error to get something to move the top. So maybe dashes would be the way to go if you're wanting to move stuff up because you can see how many of those are and you can put in more or less. So it goes spaces, dashes, numbers, and then letters. I'm actually running 2 IQs and the stick, and maybe you love organizing, but I don't love it enough to have to do it 3 times. So I have picked one IQ tablet that I put all my new patterns on and organize it there, and then I sync between the stick and the other IQ tablet. Otherwise, I'm going to just have to keep doing it over and over again, and I'm not interested in that. Something else I forgot to say, if you have the stick, it's much easier to create your folders there because you can type rather than tapping it out on the pad. But if you create empty folders, so if you created a folder and then went back and deleted the pattern out of it, it will not sync with your tablet. So empty folders don't sync. There has to be something in them before the folders will show up on your tablet if you created it on the stick, or if you created it on the tablet and we're syncing it to the stick and it was empty, it would not sync if they're empty. So I cleared off everything I was showing in the last part of the video and actually moved what I actually am using right now for my organizing, and I am not finished. But I chose edge to edge to be toward the top because I am no longer doing custom quilting for hire, so edge to edge is what I go to first. I'm still doing custom for myself, but not for hire. So here's my categories. Rather than you trying to see what they are, I do have a handout that goes with this. Now I have limited the number of categories because if my category starts getting too big, I can divide it out. So I could have Americana, and if it's getting really, really full, I could say Americana stars or something like that. I can always move a whole group. So once I got ready to organize, I didn't want to have to keep track of where I was, since I'm keeping patterns in with the designers. So I would go to one, and everything in here, all of these happen to be edge to edges, so I can select all of them at once. Now I'm picking a folder that doesn't have a lot in it on the stick, because the tablet is much faster. The stick is slow moving lots and lots of folders, not folders, lots and lots of patterns. So I'm going to say move, and yes, I do want to leave them in this catalog. And then what I did, since I was selecting everything in the designer's catalog that was an edge to edge, I just moved it into my top level edge to edge category. I'm going to say select, and it's going to take a little bit, but it moved it there. And now if I go up to edge, there's some other stuff in here that I haven't moved around. But I have these, and I can now go through everything that's sitting in my edge to edge folder. And let's just say I was choosing, I know these are already in, some of them are already in, but I was doing, let's just say texture. I said this one's texture, this one's texture. Let's just say this one is just texture. I can say move. Do I want to leave them in this catalog? The only reason I would leave them here now is if I was going to put them in more than one subcategory. So if I was going to say texture clamshell, or clamshells, or traditional, then I would say, yes, I want to leave them here. But if I am moving them to their final destination, I'm going to say no, because I don't want this folder crammed full. So I'm going to say no. And I obviously didn't get all three, but that's okay. I'm going to say enter, and then I'm going to move down to my texture catalog and say select. And it just moved it there. Now, if you're wanting to move multiples, what happens is if you use the arrow key, things get unselected. If you just scroll using your mouse or on the tablet, swiping, then they'll stay selected. But if I use the arrows, notice it unselected all of them, everything previously. But if I use the scrolling, it will keep them all selected. So if I scroll back now, they're still selected. So I can select as many as I want in a category and move them. So that's how I did it a little bit faster. For me, it was just easier to go through the designers and get everything that was edge to edge and move it into the edge to edge folder, rather than trying to sort and remember where I was. That way I could just go one designer right after another. So I do have a handout for this, and I will put a link in the description of the video. Maybe it will be a little bit easier to follow because it's all written out on the orders and everything. And I did break out what I'm starting with for my catalogs. Doesn't mean that that's how they're going to stay, because things change. Now, when I buy a new pattern, I bring it in and it goes into my download folder. So I've gone through all of my designer folders, so now it's just the download folder that has new stuff going into it. So rather than keeping everything in the download folder, and there's probably more than there should be in mine right now, I would go in and I would choose, this is something I did for a quilt I was working on. I would choose this one. I'm going to move it. Do I want to leave a copy of the pattern in this catalog? No, I don't. I'm going to move this one actually into my name. I did not design it, but I did digitize it for a quilt that I was doing, and say select. So I'm moving them out of the download folder. If I'm moving it into more than one place, so like in this case, these are One Song Needle Arts, I would move them, I would select it, and I would say move. Do I want to leave this pattern in here? I'm going to this time. And I'll show you why. I'm going to move it into Donna's folder, and actually I already have that in there, so I'm just going to say yes. Let's go back to the downloads. This is a point-to-point triangle design, so I'm going to move it. This time I'm going to say no, and I want to go up, sorry, I'm going to put it in the last catalog where I want it, and I have point-to-point, triangles, select, and it's going to move it there. Now that one's gone out of my download folder. And that's what I would do with each one in my download folder if I'm putting it into more than one new catalog. Sorry, it's not a folder. If I say folder, I mean catalog. If I want it in more than one catalog, I'm going to leave it here until I get to the very last catalog I want to move it into. Thanks for watching. I hope it's helpful.